bad.
I think this is a good place to go back to your LSD experience.
Yeah.
So looking at psychedelics and the impact that they have on people's existential dread over dying. So I know they've done studies giving it to terminal cancer patients, and from what I understand, it has a pretty radical shift in people's level of fear. As somebody who's never done psychedelics, what is that experience of the dissolution of the ego? Like, where is it taking people? Is there a way for you to sort of metaphorically explain what's happening there?
Yes. When you realize that everything you thought was real is not real, when you also realize that who you think you are is not real, I am not Deepak Chopra with this body, mind, ego identity, that this is a very provisional identity. If I say I'm my body, mind, I was once a fertilized ovum. Then I was a zygote, an embryo, a baby, a toddler, a young adult, and now this, and this will disappear. But when you realize that all your name, your form, and everything you see is provisional, two things happen. To some people, they have immediate, what we could only metaphorically call the dark night of the soul. They go into a deep depression because everything they thought was real is no longer real, including their own name, form, body, and mind. Some people get so scared that they have a bad trip. Some people cross that threshold and discover nirvana or enlightenment. And they say, wow, I thought I was squeezed into the volume of a body in the span of a lifetime, but I'm a timeless being that can morph myself into any experience, including the human experience, which is amazing. But the human experience is also that which causes existential depression. So the causes of human suffering, since you brought it up, are brought up in Eastern wisdom traditions as, number one, you suffer because you don't know who you are. You confuse yourself with your body-mind experience. Number two, you grasp and cling at experiences which are evanescent and transitory and dreamlike. You say, what happened to your childhood? It's over. What happened to yesterday? It's over. What happened to 5 minutes ago? It's over. What happens to these words? By the time you hear them, they don't exist. So, Wittgenstein, the German philosopher, said, we are asleep. Our life is a dream, but once in a while we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. So what do you wake up to? When you cross this threshold, you wake up to your true self, which is not body or mind, but the awareness in which that experience is happening. So grasping and clinging at a dream is the second cause of human suffering. The third is being afraid of anything that's unpleasant, pain, abandonment, being treated by someone not respectfully. So that's, there's aversion to certain experiences. Third cause of suffering. Fourth is identifying, which is related to it, with your ego identity. And fifth is the fear of death. Now, they're all connected. They're all the same fear. And they are not knowing who you are. This is the biggest question that humans, or everybody should be asking. Who am I? What am I? Am I the changing experience of this body, which is a perceptual activity? Am I the experience of the changing mind or the changing personality? Because you don't have the same personality when you were a kid or maybe even 10 years ago. What is it at the basis of this? When you start that reflective self-inquiry, ask yourself, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? What am I grateful for? Go into the stillness of meditation, you have what wisdom traditions have called revelation, revealed truth. Now, that sounds very grand. I would say just call it insight. Meditation, mindfulness, awareness of body, awareness of mind, awareness of mental space, awareness of the web of relationship, awareness with that which we call the universe. It leads you ultimately to the awareness of awareness. And when you discover that, that's nirvana.
Now, are you familiar with the term panpsychism?
Yes,
So I had never heard of that before, and
it's a cop-out, but
interesting. So I was going to ask if that is, so as I understand it, panpsychism is basically that consciousness itself is a force almost like gravity. So it is everywhere. There is no moment where enough atoms come together that you have enough complexity that consciousness arises, that it is truly fundamental. And when I was reading Metahuman, that's what I thought you were saying. I thought you were saying it is this thing that just is ever present. So if that's not what you're saying.
no, it's not. But I'm glad that scientists are going in that direction, including some very big and very important thinkers and luminaries in both philosophy and science are going in that direction. What they're saying is just what you said, that what we call consciousness is organized matter, and that wherever there's matter, there is consciousness, from atom to galaxy. Okay, so mind and matter go together from atom to galaxy. That's panpsychism. Okay, and it's got very good adherents, proponents, luminaries, and important minds saying that. It's a breakthrough because now you're not saying consciousness is just in the brain. You're saying it pervades the universe in the same way as gravity and atoms and electrons. But I'm saying actually there are no atoms, there are no electrons. Gravity and force fields are human constructs. So matter is a useful construct. I'm going beyond panpsychism into what is called non-duality, which means there's only consciousness. It's modifying itself into sensations, perceptions, images, feelings, and thoughts, and we give names to that. We give a name to a shape and a color and a sensation. We call it a cup. We call it a hand. We call it the Milky Way galaxy. We call it atoms and force fields. Very useful constructs. Otherwise, you wouldn't know how to navigate everyday experience. If I tell you, I'll meet you at the corner of 56th and Broadway, you assume that's real. But we made up that notation, just like we made up latitude and longitude and Greenwich Mean Time. We didn't say Botswana Mean Time. We made up the galaxies. We made up the body. We made up gravity and force fields. By we, I mean a species of consciousness that is called human.
So now my question becomes, if that is the case and all that exists is consciousness, is there something behind that? Like, why has consciousness given rise to humans? And do you see it going through like an evolutionary thing? Like how do we get here? And maybe more importantly, why do we get here?
I don't know if I can answer why other than entertainment, but I can tell you what the thinking behind this is. Is there anything behind consciousness? No. You can't get behind consciousness.
That is base level, that's it.
Yeah, but that's called pure consciousness, okay? Now, everyday experience is modified consciousness. So right now what we're experiencing is what we call the waking state of consciousness, okay?
What do you mean by that? The awareness that I'm aware?
No, the awareness that is experiencing a physical body and a physical world with eyes open is called waking state of consciousness.
Okay.
Okay? So awareness is modifying itself every time you open your eyes into this experience, right? And you call it the physical world. Now, if you close your eyes, you have another state of consciousness where you don't actually experience the physical world. You experience sensations, images, thoughts, emotions, stories. It's like a dream. As soon as you close your eyes, you're experiencing, you might call it daydreaming, but there's no difference between a daydream and what you dream at night. The physical world has disappeared, there's only a mental world. Then you go deeper at night, even the mental world disappears in what we call deep sleep. Now that is the highest intelligence, by the way, because in deep sleep, there's unconscious processing going on, there's creativity going on, there are correlations being made, there are toxins being removed, there's a whole resetting of your memories and consolidation of that. So in deep sleep, even though there is no experience of a physical or a mental world, it's a very intelligent, highly highly correlated state in which unconscious processing is occurring. Memories are being consolidated. Imagination is being refined, etc., even though you have no conscious experience. So think of these three states metaphorically, like you would think of water becoming ice as the physical world, okay, water as water, fluid, dreamy, water as vapor, even more dreamy and fluctuating and ambiguous and contradictory and difficult to grasp. But if you want a little bit beyond that, I'm speaking metaphorically, you'd end up with what is called the quantum vacuum, which is the fundamental ground of existence according to science. Okay? But you can do that subjectively. You can move from the physical world to the dream world, to the sleep world, and beyond to what is called fundamental consciousness, which is the source of all knowing, all experience. In wisdom traditions, it's called undifferentiated consciousness.
How does that differ from non-duality?
It is non-duality.
Okay.
It's all modes of knowing, all knowers, and all things known. It is fundamental ground of existence of the total universe.
Okay, so non-duality is, to put it really simplistically, that there is no subject-object. It's just all one thing, which I'm assuming you would say is pure consciousness.
The subject-object division is artificial. Reality is one wholeness. It includes all subjects, all objects, and all modes of knowing. What we have access to is a human mode of knowing. In my book, Metahuman, I talk about the butterfly, the painted lady, who smells the world through her antenna, okay, tastes the world through her feet, sees the world with 30,000 lenses that move like a kaleidoscope, okay, hears the world through her wings. What is reality to that little species? Some insects see the world 360 degrees, okay, because they have these what we call complex eyes with multiple lenses. You can only see within a certain range, but there are insects that can see 360 degrees. So what is reality? Reality, what we call reality, what today's science calls reality, comes under the heading of naive realism. Einstein was a naive realist. And I'm not saying this in a derogatory fashion. It's a word in the science of philosophy. Naive realism means that the physical world exists exactly as perceived by the five human senses. Now, obviously, that's not true. Other species experience the world through different modes of sensory perception. The second aspect of naive realism is that the physical world, as perceived by the five human senses, would exist even if no one was observing it. Well, how do you prove that? And firstly, it's naive because we know that the world is more than what is perceived by the five human senses. So this leads us to a solution, actually, of the hard problem of consciousness, which is get rid of the idea that the world is physical. What we call of the world as physical, even your physical body, is a perceptual activity. And that perceptual activity for you and me is a human perceptual activity through human consciousness, not through bat consciousness, not through mosquito consciousness, not through plant consciousness, which would fit in with panpsychism. But non-dualism says, go beyond that. There is only one consciousness that is differentiating, undifferentiated consciousness, differentiating into these different species of consciousness that form a matrix of conscious beings that are collectively projecting this universe.
Now, I know that you said that you can't answer the question why, but do you ever contemplate why? Like why we would come into all these manifestations, why they would have such different experiences?
I think if you say that consciousness is fundamental, then it must have a desire, and the desire must be, I need to experience myself. And consciousness being undifferentiated, timeless, spaceless, boundless, can only know itself through experience. So it modulates itself into these different varieties of experience, almost infinite. And we call it the universe. Universe, one song, but in that one consciousness.
Let's reground this now. So you do some really interesting personal practices. So I get it, this is all an illusion, but you do monastic retreats, you shave your head, you shave your eyebrows, you do a week of silence.
I've done that, yes.
So walk me through, what's the power in that?
The power in that is to suddenly start to become comfortable with questioning your habitual certainties. So if I asked you, what is this? You'd say it's a cup, right? Well, if you were a baby, you wouldn't know this is a cup. This is a shape, this is a color, this is a form, this is a sensation, this is a taste, and it's noise. The rest is a story. It's a human story we created, just like we created money or Wall Street or nation states or colonial empires. And we take that for reality. So when you have time to be still, question your habitual certainties, you'll realize that actually we know nothing. Nothing. Everything we know is made up. It's a human construct. And once we are embedded in that human concept, we call it reality. We don't question what is the source of this experience. So taking retreats, practicing mindful awareness of body, of mind, of mental space, of the web of relationship, the mystery of existence, it takes you slowly deeper to your true self, which is the orchestrator of everyday experience.
What's the importance of silence?
As Rumi said, God's language is silence, everything else is poor translation.
So is it listening to the subconscious? So for instance, part of the reason that meditation has been so powerful for me is, and I get what you're saying about correlation, but as you said, it's very strongly correlated. So breathing from my diaphragm, being quiet, takes me out of the sympathetic nervous system and into the parasympathetic, allows me to reduce my stress. You've done a lot of research into that, which is really, really fascinating. And it creates a quiet in my mind so that I can tap into the subconscious while I'm awake, which has been very powerful. It makes me feel far more creative. I'm getting far-flung connections that I wouldn't otherwise get in my mind. So it's been very advantageous. Is that the same experience for you with silence, or is there something I'm missing?
No, all of that is very important, because the moment you start going into the direction of pure consciousness, you go also in the direction of homeostasis, which is self-regulation. You go in the direction of healing. You activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
Talk to me about some of the science around there that your research has bared about, because it's pretty impressive.
We had we tested people who were in a 1-week retreat. We call it the seduction of spirit, which is a nice name. And at the end of the week and before the week, we tested them for gene activity and inflammation and many other things. We found that genes that cause self-regulation and healing went up, some 17-fold over baseline. Genes that cause inflammation, which is the common background in chronic illness, and chronic inflammation is the background. Genes that cause chronic inflammation went down. The level of the enzyme telomerase, which influences how we age at a genetic level, telomere length, went up significantly. In some cases, 40%. Now, this can all be explained through what we call epigenetics. And it's a revolution, and many people have replicated these findings now. Our study was done in collaboration with scientists from Duke and Harvard and UCSF and UCSD and Scripps and so on, but other people are replicating, finding similar data, if not exactly identical data. So this is a big revolution.
Now, for people that don't know epigenetics, can you give them just a quick breakdown?
Yeah, you're born with 25,000 genes from your parents. You also have 2 million to 20 million bacterial genes in your gut. These bacterial genes are called the microbiome. The human genes are the genes you have. They interact with each other to produce all the metabolites in your body and produce what you call a biological organism and maintain its health. Epigenetics says that daily experience influences the activity of your genes. So you're born with a deck of cards, but now you know how to learn how to play the deck of cards. So you can win the game of life, if you want to use that metaphor. And so gene activity is influenced by the things I mentioned: sleep, managing stress, exercise, yoga, breathing, pranayama, introspection, mindful awareness, emotions, nutrition, connection with nature. We can change our gene activities. That ability to change the activity of the genes, you can't change the cards you were dealt with, but you can change their activity. But you can also change your microbiome by changing your diet. So you can actually change much of your gene, not only expression, but the genetic information in your body. You can change the microbiome, the entire gene population, by changing your diet and following lifestyle. You can change the expression of your genes. That's epigenetics. Epi means above. And epigenetics, there's the sheath of proteins above the genes that responds to every experience you have: mental, physical, perceptual, emotional.
All right.